Well, first of all, I'd like to say that I really don't think that the Labour Party or any government in the UK is ever going to rejoin the EU, especially now that the EU is making itself so unattractive. Its own economy is in real trouble, and I think you'd be kind of crazy to join it. We certainly won't be rejoining an economic nirvana. Sorry if I could bring that closer. Since Brexit, we've done a lot of things that get virtually no press. We've adjusted a lot of our laws that get, unfortunately, virtually no attention. Everyone is worried about the cost of Brexit, but no one's looking at the advantages. A good example is right now the EU introduced a carbon border tax last year. We haven't introduced one. We do propose to do one in 2027, but we're going to do it on slightly different commodities. And that is because in the UK's economy, we are more interested in the carbon emissions of glass and ceramics, where the EU is not interested in those at all. So they did not include glass and ceramics in their carbon border tax. So what we've been able to do, even if you don't like Brexit, is we've been able to mimic the EU's laws, but tweak them so that they suit the UK economy. And that is a phenomenal advantage to any government, and one that most governments in the world outside the EU actually always enjoy, but it's one that we haven't been able to do for almost 50 years. And that comes in with everything. It was only in January this year that UK courts were finally the ultimate arbiters of UK laws. Up until that point, our judges had to take into account any EU laws. Also, Brexit has restored sovereignty to our parliament, so we get to debate things. So the UK introduced an online safety bill. The EU has a Digital Services Act. Our online safety bill bounced between the House of Lords and the House of Commons. There are a lot of amendments put to it. There's a lot of arguments, and Baroness Fox can probably give you the full blow-by-blow of what happened. But in the end, we got the rules we wanted. Had we still been a member of the EU, we would have had to impose their Digital Services Act as it was written in Brussels. We would have had nothing to do with that. And this has happened with finances as well. You know, we were going to take back control of our laws, our finance, our money, and our borders. Well, certainly in our money, we no longer pay 80% of our customs duty to Brussels, which we used to have to do, and we imported more goods from outside the EU than any other EU country. We no longer have to send a proportion of our VAT to the EU, nor do we have to send them an amount of money based on our national income. Now, also with VAT, the EU determined what the rate was, or the minimum rate. They also determined what goods we could put VAT on, what goods we could put a reduced VAT on, and what goods could be VAT-free. Since we left, the Conservative government dropped VAT on things that they want people to do, like solar panels, and now VAT-free, and electric heat pumps are VAT-free. So that's something that we could not do when we're members of the EU, which sounds really stupid when you think we've got a government that wants to encourage people to go into green technology. And yet, under the EU, we would have had to have added VAT to the cost of doing that. And it's already an expensive thing. The UK government also has dropped the nuisance tariffs. The EU loved tariffs, and they had tariffs on virtually everything, many of which were below 2%. Now, this isn't a big cost to the import, but it does mean that you have to fill in a lot of paperwork and you have to send some money to someone. We got rid of all of those, which was a fantastic boom to a lot of importers, because with modern manufacturing, there's a huge supply chain where parts are coming from all over the world and semi-finished goods are coming from all over the world, and they're getting put together. So to have a whole lot of below 2% tariffs was just a nuisance. And the government also got rid of 162 tariffs on goods that we don't make. Weirdly, we had to have import tariffs on things like orange juice and tropical fruit juices and nuts and ambient tofu, dried onions, all sorts of things that the UK doesn't actually make. But we still had to put tariffs on to protect someone in one of the 27 other EU nations. So the last Conservative government got rid of those, and That's a temporary suspension. It will expire in June 2026, but I really doubt that the Labor government will suddenly decide to start putting tariffs on tropical fruit juices again. We've also got to negotiate our own trade deals, and you've probably heard a lot about that. We rolled over all of the ones we have with the EU. We got a completely tariff-free and quota-free trade deal with the EU. We've done new deals with Australia, New Zealand and the CPTPP, also with Ukraine and the Eastern and Southern African countries. We've improved our agreement with Japan. We have a digital trade agreement with Singapore. We've created our own developing countries trading schemes, and we're still negotiating with South Korea, Switzerland, India, Israel, Canada, Mexico, and the Gulf Cooperation Council. So all of this stuff is happening, and we haven't had to do crazy things like the EU is about to put very high tariffs onto Chinese electric vehicles, even though they're also mandating that their population drive electric vehicles. And this tariff will not only affect the Chinese vehicles, but it'll also affect Minis and Volkswagens and Teslas, which are being made in China. So I could go on. We've got control of our borders. You probably know about that. We've got control of our waters. We can now close down the Dogger Bank and protect seabirds and sand eels from trawling. We can do all sorts of things that we couldn't do before. And the idea that the EU, that the Labour Party would want to go back and let the EU control all of those things just appears to be madness, because, you know, these are things that members of the left and, you know, the people in Lowestoft and Grimsby have wanted for years, and we finally got them. So that's my 2 cents.